Okay, this is Intro to Philosophy with Dr. Duane Armitage. We just finished up Aristotle, and so you've seen those videos. So we're going to, the last of which was friendship. So we're going to move now, fast forward a bit. So we covered Nietzsche, who was a 19th century philosopher. Then we went back to Plato and Aristotle. And I just want to have this, we're going to talk just very briefly about medieval philosophy, in particular the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas and some Christian adaptations of Plato and Aristotle. It's interesting to think about. Catholicism, really, why do you take philosophy at a Jesuit university, at a Catholic university? Because the answer is Catholicism really is what we could call the growing interaction and eventual fusion between Athens and Jerusalem. The growing interaction and eventual fusion between Athens and Jerusalem, that is, between Greek metaphysical thinking, Plato and Aristotle, and Jerusalem, Hebraic way of thinking. So it's interesting about Christianity. It's really interesting how Christianity can baptize anything. And what the early church did was it baptized Greek paganism. It baptized the calendar. It baptized Greek philosophy. One of the interesting things about the Protestant Reformation that Martin Luther took issue with was precisely this, was precisely Christianity's or Catholicism's baptizing of paganism or baptizing of Plato and Aristotle. So a lot of people think the Reformation was about indulgences, and it was. But it was also about Christianity, Luther's criticism, Catholicism's entanglement with Greek metaphysics, particularly Plato and Aristotle. So Luther was actually a critic of philosophy. He even at one point said, reason itself is Satan's whore. So Luther didn't like the overemphasis on the philosophical tradition. Anyway, so we're going to move very quickly to Thomas Aquinas. He's a medieval philosopher who really is, I mean, this is kind of terrible to say this, but he's like Aristotle plus little Christ, right? You get Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas is very famous for his proofs for the existence of God, his proofs of the existence of God. So we're going to talk about, with Thomas Aquinas, how he used Aristotle to prove God's existence. And we'll talk a little bit about just whether or not we can prove the existence of God in general. But first, before we do that, we have to figure out what a proof is.